All right, so what we're going to be talking about in this lecture is we're going to be just classifying triangles. Which is the very first thing we want to be doing in this unit is being able to recognize what kind of triangles do we have. I bet a lot of us are going to be coming in knowing a lot of these already. Triangles can be classified by sides and or angles. We're going to explain the and or part of that in a little bit later. So we're going to just start with, and this is just getting you the information, we're going to be starting with the side classifications. And if you know that you've got a triangle that has three congruent sides, right, that's what's called an equilateral triangle. And as always, we don't want to go by what it looks like. We want to go by what we can know. So either you're going to see marks that look like this, right? Or actual side lengths. If you get 5 centimeters, for instance, on all sides, then you can assume that it is equilateral. It's as long as they're the same, it doesn't matter how many there are. If they are all the same, that's an equilateral triangle if they have 3 congruent sides. We move on down the line here. This is one. The next one is one that you've probably seen, you've probably heard about. You may even know a definition for it, but more than likely it's not the best definition for it. That's the isosceles triangle. And when we're talking about an isosceles triangle, we're talking about a triangle that has at least 2 congruent sides. So if I were to put these in here, we'd see these marks. Those are supposed to be congruent marks. I kind of got a little squish there. Sorry about that. Right? And there's some vocab that comes along with this. I'm just going to label this triangle A, B, C. Right? We always name triangles with 3 letters, right? And just for our notes, not surprisingly, that reads triangle ABC, right? In this case here, when we have an isosceles triangle, angle A is what's called the vertex angle. It's the vertex angle because it is formed by the congruent sides, right? Sides AB and AC are congruent. That makes A the vertex angle. Angles B and C are called base angles. And they're base angles not because they're on the bottom. Base has nothing to do with bottom here. They're not vertex angles. So base angles are really non-vertex angles. So B and C are the base angles. A is the vertex angle. And then our last side classification is scalene, which has no congruent sides. And that can be indicated a couple different ways. You could either have 3 different marks. I mean, that would very clearly indicate it, that there are 3 different lengths. Or you really could have no congruence marks, because if you don't have any congruence marks, you really shouldn't be assuming that any sides are congruent because you don't know them to be congruent. So either way, either 3 different marks or no marks at all would indicate scalene, which is no congruent sides. Now let's move on to angles, and I bet you could probably figure out what the 3 angle classifications are. Right? Our first one here is if you have a triangle and all the angles are acute, it's called an acute triangle. And remember, we can look at things and say, we can look at angles and say they're acute. That's not against the rules. We can look and say that's clearly less than 90 degrees. It's not a capital letter L. So even though we don't have to have any particular measures in here to communicate that, all of these 3 angles are acute. So it's an acute triangle because they're all acute. They're all less than 90. Not surprisingly, if we have an acute triangle, we also have an obtuse triangle. This is a little more specific, however, because an obtuse triangle has exactly 1 obtuse angle. It would be, obviously, it'd be this one here, and this one might be 100 degrees. We're going to talk about later on when we get to triangle properties why that exactly 1 obtuse angle is the only option you can have. Right? But if you have exactly one obtuse angle, that's an obtuse triangle, and the others have to be acute. If you have acute, and you have obtuse, guess what? You also have right. And this is where we have to be specific. We can't just say it looks like a right angle. We have to be given this information here. That 90-degree box has to be there. But again, it's just like the obtuse angle. A triangle is, and that should, I was obviously cutting and pasting, and I didn't get that. Sorry, that should read right. Apologies. Then it has exactly one right angle. Again, we'll talk about why you can't have more than that in later lectures. Right? So you've got 6 classifications or you've got 6 total classifications: 3 side, 3 angle. Not surprisingly, with the 3-sided figure, the triangle. A few things to remember, right? A few things to keep in mind, right? Some, not all, but some can be classified by both the sides and angles at the same time, right? You probably looked at those, some of the triangles that we had up there for our classifications in those last 2 slides, and you probably said, well, that looks like the exact same triangle he used before when he was identifying scalene. And you're right. You can have a right scalene triangle. You can match an angle and a side length classification for a lot of these. Not all of them, however. That's going to be something that we have an activity about later on, right? So that some can be both, right? Some triangles can have multiple classifications on them, right? Those congruence marks, whether we're talking about the tick marks on the side lengths or on the angles, right, play a really important role when either interpreting class, if it's information given to you, or if it's information you're giving to somebody else,
Andrew Blagden, please come to the.
You really want to have, you want to take those into account, because that's how you're going to communicate what things are, or that's how you're going to know what things are. So those are not things that you should be ignoring. If you're asked to sketch something and you say properly label, you're told to properly label, that's what we're looking for, right? Things like that, like the correct marks and the correct sides on the correct angles, whatever it might be. Okay, so that's where the detail is going to be. That's where the detail is going to be. And lastly, you are going to be sketching more in this unit. Sketches don't have to be perfect, right? But you have to please put some effort into making it look like it's supposed to look. If I say sketch a right triangle here, and you do this, and I apologize for the sloppiness. I haven't used this one in a while, this mouse pad for a while, and don't just throw the 90-degree mark in there and expect that to fix everything. I'm like, yes, I'll get it. You know what a right triangle is, but you make at least an effort to get it somewhat close to right angles. Okay, so those are just the triangle classification. A couple ideas of some vocab terms in there. We're going to get lots of practice both sketching and learning the properties of all these things, so you're going to want to pay attention to all those details. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope this helped.